We just discovered dark oxygen on Earth. Breakthrough explained by Dr. Ben Miles. Dark oxygen? Like dark energon? Is this Transformers? Let's just see what this is.
The ocean can be a dark and mysterious place, and the deeper you go, the weirder it gets. As a species, we've only explored about 5
sounds like Bonnie Blue's hole. The deeper you go, the weirder it gets.
5% of the cold, dark void that covers our planet, and it just got even stranger. 5,000 meters below the surface, in the pitch black, a mysterious source of oxygen has just been discovered. Has the call of Cthulhu finally been answered? Probably not, but the truth is much more.
Oh man! When is my tentacle-faced body finally appearing? Damn it.
More perplexing and may change science forever. And it was all discovered by accident. Back in 2013,
It's like my ex. Could it be that your ex is also my ex?
Andrew Sweetman, a researcher from the Scottish Association for Marine Science, noticed something strange on the ocean floor. He was studying a region of marine ecosystems located between Hawaii and Mexico called the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, a seabed that is larger than the country of India. As part of his research, Sweetman's team sent down machines designed to measure the oxygen levels within this environment.
Larger than India, does it also have bad street food? Then it's our ex. Communism! You know that meme with like Bugs Bunny like in the background and the Soviet flag? Our ex. When will I get tentacle like an animal girl? Find an octillery? Find an octillery. I think octillery might be fun with that. And okay with that. According to the leaks.
Once at the bottom, these automated seafloor landers sealed off sections of seabed with cylinders about 22 centimeters square in size, and measured how the concentrations of oxygen in the seawater changed over a period of several days. From their previous research in areas around the world, Sweetman and his team expected to see a gradual decline in oxygen levels as organisms within the seawater consumed the oxygen through respiration. The rate of consumption could be an indicator of the amount and health of marine microorganisms in the sample, and could indicate the health of the seabed.
I'm waiting until one day they wake up something big. Finally, it's time. It's weird when it's still live. The screen this said suspended, but then the live stream is ended. Rewatch your recorded live stream. It's not suspended. Yeah, it's just that section is suspended. So how this works, which for some of you who may eventually get into streaming, so how this works, and you want to stream reactions, some things are copyrighted, and they are copyrighted not only specifically in video form, but stream form. So if you stream them, the stream will be taken down for the period until you no longer stream the copyrighted material. That's how this works. It's not a copyright strike, it's just like a copyright claim. The copyright makes it so that the stream is momentarily taken down until the segment is over.
Overall. But on this particular trip, something strange happened instead, that Sweetman had never seen before. The instruments showed that the sequestered water became richer in oxygen over time. Rather than being consumed, something was producing oxygen. This discovery of dark oxygen was announced.
It's me. I produce oxygen. Clearly, it's me. I guess there's something. There's just oxygen spawning.
A couple of days ago. What is happening here, and what does it mean, and why on earth did they decide to call it dark oxygen? These findings are really interesting, so I want to cover how oxygen usually works in the deep sea, what the researchers found, and their leading theory as to what they think is causing it.
Occitan martini. Shaken and stirred. Okay, interesting. I wish Raven is here. She likes sponsor videos. She would say, watch the sponsor!
I want to start with how oxygen usually makes its way down into the deepest parts of our oceans. Almost all of Earth's oxygen is produced by photosynthesis, carried out by plants, algae, and certain types of bacteria. You're likely already pretty familiar with this process. It occurs in chloroplasts within plant cells which contain a green pigment called chlorophyll. This pigment captures sunlight, splits water and carbon dioxide.
I don't think there is really any necessity for explaining this, because this is common knowledge. But then again, there's a lot of countries where the education system has failed them in one way or another, so who cares?
Dioxide and produces sugar and, importantly for life like us, gaseous oxygen as a waste product. Oxygen produced on land is spread across the planet through atmospheric circulation, but how it gets deep into the oceans is more complicated. At the surface, oxygen from the atmosphere can diffuse directly into the surface of water, assisted by winds and the mixing effect that increases the water's surface area. In the topmost layers, water can also be filled with photosynthetic microorganisms that are producing oxygen directly into the water. In fact, some estimates indicate that phytoplankton alone, which occur in water, produce around 50% of the entire planet's oxygen. However, sunlight entering the water can only ever travel down about 1,000 meters into the ocean under perfect conditions, but usually more like 200 meters or so. This means that photosynthesis and oxygen availability rapidly fall off.
Which makes sense, right? Because how would it even get down there? Because, like, it is very likely that up here there's probably more algae than down here, especially since sunlight doesn't reach down here. But then interesting. Sing just waiting a little again. No, I'm not waiting. Like, if there was something copyrighted, I will know. I will know. I will know.
Beyond this depth. So how does oxygen reach deeper layers of water? That mostly relies on the fact that gases dissolve better in cold water than warm water, and that cold water is also denser than warmer water, so it sinks. This allows polar water to soak up and hold onto large amounts of oxygen and then be drawn down to the ocean floor, creating a convection current called the thermohaline circulation. This drives a global conveyor belt.
Ah, okay. So the water is cold makes it so that the oxygen can slowly move further down. Interesting. Okay, that kind of makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. When you sing, it was beautiful. I can't sing.
Moving oxygen-rich waters across the ocean floor over a surprisingly long and slow process, circulating on timescales between 100 and 1,000 years. This provides a constant low level of oxygen to the ocean floor, enabling life to thrive, even if it does sometimes look a little weird. This idea that oxygenated ecosystems are only possible through...
Yeah, remember the blobfish that actually is not ugly? It's just that if you take out the bro from, like, its habitat, it will completely go into its wobbly schwobbly state because the pressure does no longer hold it together. Remember, blobfish are not ugly.
Through photosynthesis, and that all other ecosystems are kind of lucky to receive some of the offshoot oxygen, has been the foundation of how we understand why life has evolved the way it has on these systems and on Earth as a whole. Sweetman's discovery that actually there may be a source of oxygen on the ocean floor potentially could rewrite our understanding of what is possible on our planet. Initially, when Sweetman and his team actually retrieved their data, they actually thought that the sensors they were using were faulty, because every study ever done...
So pretty much like they sent these sensors down there and then realized, huh, that's weird. There's a lot of oxygen down there. That makes no sense. So it's probably in the rocks. Poke is a blockfish. I am not a blobfish! I'm just naturally ugly. That's the difference.
done in the deep sea has only ever seen oxygen being consumed rather than produced. They put the result down simply to bad data and moved on with other experiments. It wasn't until 8 years later in 2021 that Sweetman went on another research cruise and again found the same result. For this experimental run, however, the researchers used a different measurement method. So now two independent approaches had produced datasets that both showed the same result. It was at this point that Sweetman realized that for the last 8 or 9 years he may have been ignoring this hugely groundbreaking process occurring 4,000 meters down on the ocean floor. Further still, the amount of oxygen being produced wasn't insignificant. The concentrations in these chambers began to exceed the oxygen level normally observed in surface waters rich with photosynthetic organisms. So what was actually going on here? This is where a unique feature of
the rocks are producing oxygen. We're breathing rock air. I don't know. Could be interesting. I'm rough around the edges as well. Don't insult blobfish. That's rude. Exactly.
The Clarion-Clipperton Zone comes into play. In this area of the Pacific, the seafloor is covered with small rock-like clusters rich in metallic deposits called polymetallic nodules. You may have heard of these clusters before. They are the resources often targeted by deep-sea mining companies, as they are full of valuable materials like cobalt, manganese, and nickel, critical for various industries from battery technologies to consumer.
So what he's saying is the rocks are breathing. The rocks are alive!
Electronics. These polymetallic nodules were unique to the Clarion-Clipperton Zone that Sweetman was studying, suggesting that these rocks may have an important role. In September of 2023, Sweetman contacted his colleague Franz Geiger, a professor of chemistry at Northwestern University, to discuss possible explanations for this oxygen source. The result of this work was the pair coined the term dark oxygen because, like all good scientists, when faced with a mysterious phenomena that can't be explained, you just prefix it with dark. Geiger, though, did have experience investigating novel oxygen sources, and had previously found that.
So pretty much it's the same as it's called dark matter. Well, like, we know it's there, but we don't know what it actually is. Okay. So pretty much putting dark into anything in front of anything scientific means we know it's there, we just don't know what it is. Okay. Understood. Learned something new here. It's called blobfish because it's blobbing my belly in it. What the heck?
Under certain conditions, salt water in the presence of rusted metal can generate small electric currents. Could it be that these metallic nodules were performing a simple form of electrolysis, splitting water into its components of hydrogen and oxygen through some rudimentary form of naturally occurring battery? To understand what was actually happening, the team recreated the conditions found on the sea floor in a laboratory on board their ship. The researchers began by sterilizing their samples to remove possible oxygen-producing organisms from the samples of nodules and seafloor sediment to ensure.
So they genocided everything around that, around the rocks. Terrible.
That no other sources of oxygen generation existed in their experimental equipment. By enclosing the samples in airtight containers, they monitored the oxygen levels over a period of several days. Consistent with their observations on the ocean floor, the team observed again that the oxygen levels slowly increased in the containers, despite no photosynthetic life being present. Interestingly, oxygen levels increased to 3 times the background concentration.
The rocks are producing actually air. That is crazy. Never heard of that one before. That's new. Really? Blobfish. Well, that's funny. Instagram comments are peace. No, they aren't. Have you read Instagram real comments? Like, this is the most diabolical shit I've ever seen.
Ultimately then slowly plateauing after a few days. To provide a deeper analysis, the pair then shipped crates of samples to Geiger's laboratory at Northwestern University, and what they found was shocking. Literally. From the surface of a single nodule, the team measured voltages of up to 0.95 volts. For context here, it takes about 1.5 volts of electricity, about the same as a standard AA battery, to split seawater through the process of electrolysis. So here we have some kind of interesting facts starting to come together. We have evidence of some voltage generation.
So we have the rock. We have the rock batteries. Interesting. That means I can power like things with a heckin' rock. That's interesting. That might be useful for other things actually.
The oxygen produced in their experiment plateaus, which could indicate that the energy that drives the splitting of these water molecules becomes somehow depleted. So maybe the team is correct in that somehow there is a form of geological battery in operation. Polymetallic nodules are pretty strange structures, typically forming over millions of years, as metals from seawater precipitate onto a nucleating point, usually something like a fragment of shell, a bone, or a rock. And most of the estimates that I've seen say they grow at a rate of 1 to 10 millimeters per million years. In the paper, they hypothesize that the dark oxygen production may have partly resulted from seawater electrolysis, with the necessary energy coming from the potential difference between metal ions within the nodule layers, leading to an internal redistribution of electrons. They go on to say that the geobattery hypothesis is further supported by the link between the dark oxygen production rate and the average surface area of a nodule. What does that mean? That just means the bigger these nodules get, the more oxygen they seem to produce.
So the air rocks, pretty much just the air rocks. And the bigger they get, the more air they can produce. What is specifically needed though? Like, can I just drop that rock into like space and it will just randomly produce oxygen?
This connection could be due to an increased abundance of anode and cathode sites, or a greater abundance of high nickel or copper dendritic porous layers in the larger nodules. However, that kind of opens up more questions, like why didn't this process deplete a long time ago? A battery in practice is actually a very hard thing to get right. I appreciate here that this is still very early work, but this feels like kind of a weak argument to me, because many mechanisms could be surface area dependent. At the moment, we just don't really know what is actually happening here. One point I did find interesting though was that there was a theory put forward by the researchers that potentially the initially very high oxygen production rate that ultimately then plateaued may have been related to the bow wave of the landing vehicles removing sediments from the surface of these nodules and exposing electrochromically active sites. This again is kind of surprising to me, and I'm not entirely sure that I'm convinced by that as an explanation. In my mind, the rate at which these nodules grow is so incredibly slow that the idea that sediment deposition or removal of that sediment is ultimately the rate limiting step just doesn't really feel that reasonable to me. But as of yet, we have very little further information. We do know though that oxygen, it looks like, is being produced.
I mean, that could be useful for a lot of things, right? That could be useful for a lot of things. And apparently also electricity. So I guess there could be some way to utilize this? But in what way?
And actually, that's a really awkward realization for the deep sea mining companies that partly funded this research. If we do find that these polymetric nodules provide essential sources of oxygen for deep sea life, but potentially also for our planet as a whole, then maybe mining these deposits for resources could turn out to be a really bad idea. In response to this...
True, because if you take it away, and these already take that long to reappear, that would make it so that you would pretty much like add to the dying out of like the oceans. Interesting.
Study, Patrick Downs, a representative of the metals company, one of these deep sea mining companies that funded the work, said he has serious reservations about the findings, adding that his own analysis suggests Sweetman's results are due to oxygen contamination from external sources, which would be very convenient, say, if you were a mining company that didn't want its operations to ultimately be disturbed. Apparently, a rebuttal article is on its way from this group, so we'll just have to wait and see. However, this is something we should take seriously, Finally, back in 2016, marine biologists visited sites that were mined in the 1980s and found that not even bacteria had recovered in the mined areas, whereas in unmined regions nearby, marine life continued to flourish.
Damn, then it might actually not be a good idea to mine these. Whew. Uh-oh.
Why such dead zones persist for decades is still kind of unknown. However, this should put a major asterisk onto strategies for deep sea floor mining, as the faunal diversity on nodule-rich areas is actually even higher than the most diverse tropical rainforests. A deeper understanding of how these oxygen generation mechanisms work, and if they are significant to oxygen levels on our planet, either now or at any time in our past, could be influential to understanding not only how life evolved on our planet.
Okay, by that, there would be a way to easy test it, right? Just, if you're not sure, for science, just grab a bunch of these rocks and place them in the area that was mined, and just, like, wait a little if it would recover or not. If it does, then you quite literally have your answer.
But also how we look out to our universe to determine if what we are seeing out there are actually signs of life. If oxygen can be created easily and commonly without the need for life, our studies looking for molecular oxygen on exoplanets might turn up nothing more than just a bunch of space rocks. This is a really fascinating and deep topic, and if you are interested in it, we actually did a video very recently with literally one of the pioneers of research in this field looking for signs of alien life that are out there in the universe. I'll leave a link somewhere or down in the description so you can find out more. I want to know what you think about this breakthrough. I think at the moment,
if there are aliens out there, if they're not big-boobed hot girls, then I don't care.
there are very little credible other theories being put forward, but I don't entirely believe this battery argument because the mechanics and complexity of actually making working batteries that don't instantaneously deplete themselves is pretty tricky to get right. What else could be causing this? Tell me what you think in the comments down below. Do you agree with this geo-battery hypothesis? Personally, like I said, I'm not convinced. If you guys really enjoyed this video and you'd like to support the channel more than you already are by watching, feel free to check out our Patreon page that we literally just...
That's pretty much the end of the video. That was interesting. Usually I don't watch science stuff that much, but that was interesting. Guess there's rocks out there that produce oxygen. For no apparent reason.